There's a new federal rule that's just dropped, and it is going to change things for tens of thousands of commercial drivers. So, in the next few minutes, we're going to break down exactly what this means for you, for your drivers, and really for the whole trucking industry. Okay, so what's the one-sentence summary here? Well, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, the FMCSA, has just finalized a new rule, and it's all about tightening up who is actually eligible for a non-domiciled commercial driver's license. The whole point, according to them, is to close what they see as a really critical safety gap. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll start with the why behind the new rule, then get into exactly what's changing. We'll look at who this affects, separate the confirmed facts from some of the industry chatter. I'll give you a practical checklist for carriers, and then we'll wrap up by debunking 5 common myths that are already out there. Okay, first things first. Why now? Why this rule? To really get it, you have to understand the problem the feds were trying to solve. And it all comes down to one very specific type of license. And that license is the non-domiciled CDL. So what is that? It's pretty simple, actually. It's a commercial driver's license for someone who's legally allowed to work here in the US, but they aren't technically a permanent resident of any particular state. So the core problem, at least in the FMCSA's eyes, was that the system was broken. Federal audits were finding that, states just weren't following the rules. Take Minnesota, for example. A federal audit there found that a full 33% of the driver records they looked at didn't meet the requirements. Now, for the agency, that's not just a paperwork issue. That is a huge safety gap. All right, so if that's the problem, what's the fix? Well, the new rule makes some really specific, really important changes to the whole process. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The changes are pretty major. First up, eligibility gets way stricter. We're talking only H-2A, H-2B, and E-2 visa holders can even apply. Second, and this is a big one, employment authorization documents, EADs, they're no longer accepted as proof. They're out. Third, states now must use the federal SAFE system to verify a driver's immigration status, no exceptions. And finally, the licenses themselves won't be valid for as long. The expiration date will be either the driver's admit until date on their I-94 or 1 year, whichever comes first. This rule didn't just pop up out of the blue. It's actually been in the works for a while. It was first introduced back in 2025, then it got tied up in court for a bit after some legal challenges, but now it's been finalized and published. So the main thing you need to know is this. The clock is ticking. The rule becomes effective on March 16th, 2026. So who's going to feel this? The short answer? Pretty much everyone. We're talking individual drivers, carriers of all sizes, and even the state agencies that issue the licenses. The estimates are that this is going to impact around 40,000 drivers every single year. That's how many will need to deal with this as their current licenses come up for renewal. So yeah, it hits the drivers, it hits the carriers who employ them, and it definitely hits the state DMVs, the SDLAs, that have to process all this. Let's make this real. Imagine you're an owner-operator. The responsibility here falls squarely on your shoulders. When your CDL is up for renewal, you have to be the one to prove you've got one of those 3 specific visas. If you can't, no renewal. It's that black and white. Now, what if you're a small carrier? Honestly, this means more administrative headaches. It's more paperwork, for sure, and your potential hiring pool just got a lot smaller. You're going to have to get really good at verifying these very specific visa documents and tracking those expiration dates like a hawk. And for the big guys, the large fleets, the impact is massive. It's systemic. We're talking about having to completely overhaul their hiring and compliance systems from the ground up. They've got to build in those mandatory SAVE checks and retrain entire departments on these new, incredibly strict rules. Okay, with any big change like this, you get a ton of chatter. It's hard to separate the signal from the noise. So let's do that right now. Let's look at what's a confirmed fact versus what's just a claim or an estimate floating around out there. So on the confirmed fact side of the ledger, straight from the FMCSA, the rule is live on March 16, 2026. Eligibility is absolutely limited to those 3 visa types, and EADs are a no-go. Now, on the claims and estimate side from industry sources, you hear things like this could impact anywhere from 60,000 to 200,000 drivers. You'll also see it pointed out that a huge majority, over 80% of public comments, were against the rule. And some people are arguing that, hey, any driver shortage can be filled by all the drivers who were sidelined during the recent freight recession. Okay, so this all leads to the most important question. What do you actually need to do to stay out of trouble? Because for carriers, compliance is not a suggestion. So here's a straightforward checklist to make sure you're ready. All right, get ready to take notes. Step 1. Audit your current roster of drivers right now. Who has a non-domiciled CDL? Step 2. Update your hiring policies. From now on, you're only screening for H-2A, H-2B, or E-2 visa holders. Step 3. You have to require 2 things from applicants: an unexpired foreign passport and their I-94 form. 4. You need to make that federal SAFE system check a standard part of your verification process. 5. Document every single step. Create a paper trail. 6. Set up a system to track the I-94 expiration dates for these drivers. And last but definitely not least, Step 7. Do not, under any circumstances, accept an employment authorization document as proof of eligibility. Just don't do it. Okay, let's move on to some myth busting. A lot of bad information starts flying around with changes like this, so let's set the record straight on 5 big ones, rapid fire style. Myth number 1. The rule is a ban on all foreign drivers. Nope, not true. It simply narrows the field to 3 very specific non-immigrant visa categories. Myth number 2. This rule just appeared out of thin air. Again, false. This is the final version of a rule that was first proposed way back in 2025. It went through public comments, a legal review, the whole 9 yards. Myth number 3. And this one is absolutely critical, that EADs are still good to go. They are not. The new rule is crystal clear. EADs are no longer acceptable proof of legal presence for getting a non-domiciled CDL. Myth number 4. On March 16th, everyone's CDL is just going to disappear overnight. That's not how it works. The rule isn't retroactive. It only applies when you go to get a new license or renew an old one. Your current CDL is perfectly valid until its own expiration date. And the last one, myth number 5, this whole thing is just pointless government red tape. Well, the FMCSA would strongly disagree. Their official justification points directly back to those systemic failures they've found at the state level, and even to fatal crashes involving drivers who, they argue, were improperly licensed. For them, this is all about closing a dangerous loophole. So, after all that, what's the one thing you really need to remember? It's this. Compliance has fundamentally changed. It's no longer just about checking a driver's MVR. It's now about verifying their specific immigration status. And that forces every single carrier to ask themselves a really tough question. How is this shift going to completely reshape our hiring strategy? For more explainers that break down the rules shaping our industry, make sure you subscribe.